everyone, I'm Preeti Kaur. I am EVP Engineering at Honor Home Instead. And I'm super excited to be here. That was a great panel. And I agree. I don't think AI is something to fear. And hopefully this presentation helps. So yeah, I am really thrilled to be here and talk about why smart home tech isn't a luxury anymore. And it's truly something, it's a matter of survival. None of us here is in the business of producing gadgets and using technology for the sake of using technology. And I think this is why, since we are all in the business of survival, um, AI becomes an important conversation, and smart tech is an important conversation for all of us. It's not about the bells and whistles. I think of it as the seatbelt that you have to put on before you get into a crash, not after. So let's talk about this. So just to, oh, I have a mic here. Just to give you guys a little bit of an introduction on who Honor Home Instead is. So we served around, there's some numbers, we served around 50 million hours of care in 2024, getting us around 1.7 billion in revenue. So we truly have built the largest senior in-home care network across the world. And the reason we've been able to do that is because we invest in the people and the technology that supports them. So to me, it's more than these numbers, right? It's more about the mission. It's about, we all have a story, and I have a story why I joined this industry. And it's about helping older adults remain at home with dignity, safety, and connection. So the technologist in me lives and breathes this, and this is the dream that I have. So speaking of technology, let's continue talking about Gen AI. So at Honor Home Instead, we say this a lot. It's AI with heart. What do we really mean when we say that? Well, we mean using the right kind of intelligence at the right time for the right kind of care is what Gen AI enables. An example of that would be, we were talking about caregivers in the panel before. We could say, hey, Sally is a great caregiver. What AI will let you do is you can say, hey, Sally is a great caregiver for Mrs. Smith, and here is why. That's the power of Gen AI. It makes things a little bit more personal, a little bit more urgent, and if we get it right, a lot helpful. So let's talk about that. How is that? So it's important, and I think this, again, I was so happy to hear what the panel was discussing. You cannot just throw Gen AI and something at something and then hope for magic to happen. That's not how it works, right? So we at Honor have been using machine learning models for years. And we're talking about scheduling. That's something we use ML in the background for, predicting when a care professional is it's good shift commute for them. Those are the kinds of things we all think about in this industry. Also to predict if there is going to be a no call, no show. That's what nightmares are made of. So you all have, I'm sure, been in a situation where something like that happens. So in today's day and age, we can make these workflows a lot more efficient and predictive and all of the good stuff that, again, was just discussed in the panel. So that's kind of where Gen AI comes in. It's super powerful because it can generate context and identify problems on its own once it gets going. So at Honor, we collect millions of data points on a daily basis. These could be simple things like a conversation between a staff member and a client or their daughter, their grandson. It could be something a care professional comes back to the office and tells you about. It could be just a normal conversation. So in between Aunt Margie's cat, how she's doing updates, you can actually look for those little signals. And when you add that all together, it becomes this pattern recognition of, that's kind of where you can do predictions and create, what do I do next? So no buttons pressed, no specific calls made, just through normal conversations. And then Gen AI takes it further. It knows who is this conversation, these data signals important for, and it can truly direct it instantly to the right place, to the right person at the right time. And the tech behind these features can understand the urgency as well. So a phone call that, hey, I have a shift 7 days from now and I need to be at my son's graduation, so I'm not going to make it, from a caregiver is very different than, hey, I met with an accident on the way to a shift where the person on the other end is a all-time supervision, no gap in care client. Those two are very different phone calls. So Gen AI helps you kind of get through that quickly. So this is where we say faster and smarter. Now, let me assure you, it's not a hype. It's an infrastructure. It is here, and we're already using it. We're using it to save time, prevent crisis, allow caregivers to focus on what humans can do best, what matters the most. It's connection and compassion. Because at the end, AI does not replace the human. It lifts them and it enables them to do things that only humans can do, which is about the care and the connection and much more. What you see here on this slide is that these are facts. These are not made up numbers. This is all the collection of information I've done. And this boggled my mind, right? This is, firstly, 10,000 Americans turn 65 every single day. And by 2060, nearly 95 million people will be over 65. And out of those, 20 million will be over 85. Let that sink in for a second. Big numbers. So that's a 207% increase from today. And here's another hard truth. 70% of these older adults will need long-term care. But unfortunately, by 2030, we will be short by 150,000 caregivers. What these numbers are screaming at us is we cannot hire our way out of this. We have to build our way out of this with smarter systems. And in other words, this isn't just a staffing problem. This is a systems problem. It's a design problem. And honestly, we all know this. It's ultimately a human dignity problem. So I'm not done with numbers. So a few more. I won't go through all these numbers, but the main thing I'm trying to point out here is, and I want to emphasize, is that the desire to age at home is nearly universal. Everybody wants to retire where they made all the memories. And 90% of older adults want this. And this demographic, like I mentioned, will triple between now and 2060. So the key takeaway from all these numbers is it's a perfect storm. People are living longer, not necessarily healthier, fewer caregivers, rising costs, and honestly, greater isolation, which is a big problem for our older senior community. So we're headed towards a systemic overwhelm. And it's not because people like us and y'all aren't trying, it's because the level of demand is just through the roof. Okay, so I'm just trying to define the problem space, which isn't new to you all. But the last point on that is that even if we wanted to fall back on the institutional care, we cannot, right? Nursing home bed capacity is flat, hospital inpatient beds are down, et cetera, et cetera. You're all more aware of it than maybe even I am. So all this is to say that it's a great thing that we all exist and our in-home care businesses exist, because that is the way to solve this problem. So what should we do? So the answer at this point, I hope, is kind of obvious, which is we don't just need more hands, we need better tools. We just have to revolutionize how and where care is delivered. That's exactly why home care, powered by technology, has to lead. Not as a backup plan, it has to be the frontliner. So we must invest in infrastructure of care where it's needed the most, which is at home, right? That's why it's the smart home care tech, where people want to be. Another obvious thing is we need to start reimagining what retirement planning should look like. It's not just about housing. It's about health, mobility, and really importantly, with that demographic, it's digital literacy. You have to have digital literacy. The ability to use a voice assistant, a fall detector, these are vital things. This is as important as knowing your insurance premium, in my opinion. And this is why we at Honor Home Instead have stopped designing for a fantasy world of infinite staffing, because that does not exist. But we are really planning for the real world with technology. And that's why, AI and the systems that support this will help us scale compassion and preserve dignity. Okay, so if we have it all figured out, what's the problem? Well, the twist in all of this, the biggest obstacle to adopting smart care tech is actually not the tech itself, um, or even the cost, it's the pride. We all have heard that first fall when it happens for an older adult, be it your grandparent. They're always going to tell you, oh, it's okay, it was a one off thing. But unfortunately, it's really not. And by the time the second fall happens, you're already in crisis mode and it's too late. So that is why passive monitoring is so powerful. And these tools can build a home, which is such a, to me, the whole ecosystem that speaks up when the resident does not. They can alert, detect, and escalate all without needing anyone to say, please help me, I've fallen. There is no need for that. I think that's huge. Now, pride isn't the only barrier. That I think you all know very well, that cost, lack of reimbursement, the digital literacy, access issues, and honestly, a tech infrastructure that was not built for elderly in mind, right? It wasn't built with them in mind. So let's talk about the group that gets squeezed the hardest. And I think it's the middle class. They're too rich to qualify for Medicaid, too poor to afford private pay care out of pocket. And this group is just, it's not just underserved, but also underplanned for. So the answer isn't just to wait for the government payouts to catch up. We all know how that's going. The answer is to make smart care tech more affordable, accessible, preventative, and not a luxury for a few, but it has to be a standard for everyone. So we need to shift from reactive crisis response to a proactive preparation. That means building a roadmap for health, mobility, and digital readiness when you're 65 and you're not scrambling when you're at 85. This is the kind of education we need to give our senior population. And the honest truth is that the best tech in the world won't save lives if people can't afford it, understand it, and really importantly, trust it. Another part that was discussed in the panel just now. So the real work is not just innovation, it's also inclusion and keeping all these groups in mind when technologists like myself are building technology. All right, so that was a lot of words, but what does this really mean? They mean that smart home tech isn't just a product category, it is a whole system of products and services. I don't think any one company can solve this alone. We need an ecosystem where everything talks to everything. So at Honor, we're seeing how Gen AI is helping families find care. It can train caregivers. It can power real-time alerts and intervention. But this only works when the data follows the person, right? It goes from sensors to caregiver nodes to doctors to family caregivers to the whole ecosystem of a human that you're trying to provide care for. And it has to happen instantly. And there's no other way to do it other than using Gen AI. So what is the call to action for Honor Home Instead? Well, first, integrate smart tech into every care plan, not just for the early adopters, but existing care plans. Second, train providers to become tech enablers. Third, educate families before a crisis. To me, this is the most important piece, when planning is possible and not when panic has set in. And finally, fight for policies that treat home care tech as essential infrastructure. Because the future of aging isn't in 2040, it's already here. And we have the tools. We now just need the will to build it and keep going, change the behavior. All right, so that was a lot about Honor. I wanted to show a little video just so everyone can see how far all of this has come from a dexterous ADL standpoint and what robotics can actually do.
Nice. Now put them in the case.
Okay, I will put them in the case.
You can look it up on YouTube. There are lots of amazing videos like this. This is just to point out that the one takeaway from this talk is it's not a far future. It's a near future, and it's coming, and we all need to be prepared, and we all need to understand how to augment it to help this crisis that's coming our way and embrace it with open arms. I personally think that the faster we can change behavior and have conversations with the community around us and make it normalized, the faster we can get through the staffing problem. Thank you for the time.
Let's hear it for Preeti.